Hey everyone, I hope you guys are doing well today. I'm excited to be here as always. You're going to see the background of my apartment because I'm moving into my home this evening. So everything's clear. I don't have any of my stuff set up, so I apologize for the non-nice background that I typically have. So let's get into it right away. I'm excited. In this video, I'm going to get into the difference between a interdependent relationship and a codependent relationship, and what's really the difference between the two in the first place. An interdependent relationship is one where two people are working together for the best of one another. A codependent relationship is a type of relationship where two people are needing each other and will do negative things towards each other to keep that other person in their life because that other person is an anchor for them. Does that make sense? It's really important to understand the distinction between codependent and independent relationships, because when we're talking about freedom of relationship and what it means to feel free in our connection with another human being, we need to understand the difference between codependency and interdependency, because those two can get very similar. So what does it mean to be free in a relationship? I can remember one of the really first deep relationship I got into where I really loved that person. I remember the first one that I got into, that individual loved me and I loved her, but there was a lot of codependency because we were looking at that other person as someone who made us feel a certain way, and we couldn't find that feeling within ourselves. So I made her feel secure. Hey, Jenny. Hey, Tracy. Good to see you. Hey, Evelyn. Hey, Troy. So I looked at her as someone who was really loving and open, and she made me feel safe. And I also made her feel safe. But eventually it got to a point in the relationship where we became dependent upon one another for that feeling of safety. Neither of us had ever known that feeling of safety before, and so we realized, okay, you know what I need to do? I need to find this feeling within myself. And so what would happen is when we weren't in the same space together, she would feel one way, I would feel another, and it wouldn't work. Like we no longer made each other feel safe. In the beginning we did, but then at the end we didn't. And so that was a very codependent relationship. And so what happened was she started trying to control me, aspects of me, because I made her feel safe. And so if I wasn't around, then she wouldn't feel safe. And that wasn't a really pleasant relationship. It caused for a lot of tension, caused for a lot of upset, caused for a lot of anger. So it wasn't helpful. And so that's a codependent relationship, and it didn't feel free anymore. When I first got into that relationship, it felt very freeing. I felt very safe. But then eventually it got to a point where I was like, oh, this person's really clinging to me. And hey, Will, good to see you. This person's really clinging to me. And I need to figure out how I can have freedom in it, how I can feel safe and open. So it really got to a point eventually where I just felt like restricted in the relationship. There was no freedom because we needed each other. And that wasn't a great space to come from. Really, the best relationships come from a place of want and not need. So it's all about want. So I'm going to share with you guys my screen here, and we're going to break this down Barney style. Hey, Edith, good to see you. And guys, if you have any comments or thoughts or questions as we go throughout this, please feel free to check out the screen and you can share anything there. Hey, Aaron, good to see you. So feel free to share on the comment section. Beautiful. So this is what it looks like. If I'm in StreamYard's still not working with the paint, so I'm gonna have to go online here to do online paint. But we're gonna break down codependency and interdependence and the difference between the two. I think it's really important to understand the difference between codependency and interdependence, because one relationship feels freeing and open, while another relationship feels incredibly tight and incredibly constricting. And my idea of a healthy relationship, hey Samira, is one where I feel open, where I don't feel tight, I don't feel obligated, I don't feel like I have to be there. It's one where I feel good in my body. So if we go to, I'm gonna go to my window here, and hopefully you guys can see paint. Can everyone see paint? Beautiful. So this is what this looks like. So if this is, we're gonna draw a line down the center here, right? Okay. And we're gonna put codependency. So codependent, and we're going to put interdependent, INTR dependent. So we have codependent and interdependent. What are some qualities of a codependent relationship? A codependent relationship is based off of need. I need you. I need you to be there. If I don't have you in my life, I can't live without you. I can't do anything. An interdependent relationship is based off of want. I want you in my life. I enjoy your being. I enjoy who you are. I want you here. So notice the difference between the two. There's a much more freedom in want and way less freedom in need. Need is not a fun emotion, not a fun place to come from. Oh, I need you, or I need this person. Want, there's a lot more open space. There's a lot more freedom. That's what we want to create. We want to create one that's a relationship that's about need. Or I'm sorry, a relationship that's about want, not need. Let's go into number 2 here. So another facet of codependent relationships is they're tight. There's a constriction. Constriction, right? Interdependent relationships feel free. And the reason why they feel free is because someone isn't clenching onto you. When someone's energy is clenching onto you because they need you, it doesn't feel good. It feels constricted. It's almost like you can't breathe in the relationship. But when someone is just wants you in their life because you make it better, that feels much more spacious. It feels much more open. It feels much more enjoyable. That's a much better place to come to than as opposed to being tight and constrictive. Anything tight and constrictive, that's not enjoyable. So we want to create as much spaciousness and openness and freedom in our relationships. That's what it's really about. Does this make sense, you guys? Are you guys tracking on this so far? So it's not about need or it's not about I have to have you. It's about I want you in my life and I feel free. Another facet of codependency is blaming. A facet of interdependency is responsibility. Responsibility. So the codependent individual, they are in a space where they want to blame the other person for the way that they're feeling. So for instance, they say, well, you came at me in this way, and now I feel this way. So they blame their feelings on other people. Whereas in the interdependent relationship, we take full responsibility for our feelings and emotions. Full 100% responsibility. A codependent relationship says, I'm feeling this way because of you. Whereas an interdependent relationship says, I feel this way, you feel this way. And there's total separation. So there's an honoring of boundaries. Does this make sense, you guys? Are you seeing this? So interdependent relationships are the types of relationships we want to create, because interdependent relationships allow us to be more free, more open, and more spacious, and more of who we actually are. That's what it's all about. Codependent relationships, no one's taking responsibility for their part or for what they did. And and that's not a healthy way of living. And it's based off of need. And whenever we have a need for someone, there's a tightness. The emotion associated with need is always fear. The emotion associated with want is always desire. Which one would you want around your energy field? Which one would you want to have around you? Someone who's need-based is always thinking, if I don't have this, then this bad thing is going to happen. And it's a life driven by fear. Someone who's living in more of a want-based space is coming from a place of desire, is coming from a place of, I want you in my life, so this feels good. I desire you. Desire is a much better energy to have in your energy field. Interdependent relationships, they most of the time they end healthy. Codependent relationships don't have a chance. Because what happens is in a codependent relationship, one person needs one thing and the other person needs another thing, and they think that they can only get it through that other person. And so an interesting thing happens. When you think you can only get that one thing from the other person, then what ends up happening is we start to blame that other individual anytime that we think we're not going to get what it is that we want from them. We start to look at them as the bad guy because it's like we need what it is that they have because we can't provide it for ourselves yet. But at the same time, we're worried and concerned whether they can show up in a way that we want. An interdependent relationship doesn't do that. An interdependent relationship says, hey, you have something that I want, I have something that you want. Can we help each other out, but not become dependent upon each other? It's mutual desire. So I just wanted to ask you guys and take some reflection and pause on this. What type of relationships have you had in the past? Have they been more codependent or have they been more interdependent? And if they were codependent, what was that about? What was it that you needed from them that you thought you couldn't get anywhere else? And if they were interdependent, what made them interdependent? Does this make sense, everyone? Is everyone tracking on this so far? So we want to create relationships always that are interdependent. That's a much more freeing and open space to come from. Freedom is the ability to act in any manner that you want and just taking action. That's all freedom is. So many individuals in the world today don't live free lives. And a lot of people don't want to live free lives because they don't want the burden of responsibility. They'd rather just blame someone else for their problems or their issues. But that's a codependent mindset. Freedom is our ability to act in a way and take action in a way that we want. And we're fully 100% responsible for the consequences. And it's the same with a relationship. I love you. I care for you. I want to be here. And I take full responsibility if this thing goes south. And they also take responsibility if something goes south or if it doesn't work out, but it was worth it. So freedom is the ability and will to take action in a way that we choose, whether we are aware of the consequences or not. But see, what happens in codependency is no one wants to take full responsibility. They just would rather blame someone. And blaming is always done because it's easier. It's always done that way. It's just, I'm just going to blame this person because I don't then have to take responsibility for it. It's much easier to blame shift than it is to take full responsibility for something. Does that make sense, you guys? So what relationships in the past have you had that have been not necessarily maybe codependent or interdependent, but what relationships in the past have you had that were where there was a lot of blame shifting involved? If there was a lot of blame shifting involved, then chances are that was a codependent relationship. Codependent relationships have a lot of reaction, whereas interdependent relationships have a lot of action. Interdependent relationships are always healthier because we're coming from a place of I don't need you, I want you in my life. I was just talking to a client the other day, and she has a husband who's incredibly narcissistic. For anyone who's watching this, you might be on here. It's not you though, Marge, or you, Wendy. So she was coming from a place of she has an ex-husband who's incredibly narcissistic. And she asked me, she said, I don't understand why he keeps expecting me to be who I used to be. And I said, it's because he wants to bring you back into that old codependent relationship, that old way of doing things. But that old way of doing things is no longer a part of who you are. She's actively seeking out interdependent relationships. But he came up to her and said, and tried to hook her in, tried to get her all up on fear, started trying to blame issues on her. And that would typically, in the past, that would have caught her. She would have been like, oh my gosh, what am I doing wrong? I need to fix this. Now that never happens because she's aware of when he's trying to gaslight her and trying to make her feel like she's at fault. That's what we do in codependent relationships. We try to put it or pin it on other people instead of taking full responsibility, because it's easier to pin it on other people as opposed to taking full responsibility. Does this make sense, you guys? Is everyone tracking on this? Guys, if this is helpful, please share with any family or friends. I want this work to go out in the world. It's going to make it a much better place. So please, if you're inspired by this and you feel like this is really valuable and useful, please share. What questions do you guys have? What questions? I'm going to stop sharing my screen here. What questions do you guys have around this? Is this making sense? So I'm going to bring up some comments here. Hey, Robin. Tracy says, I guess in the past I attracted codependent for some reason. I ended up leaving them for being too needy and possessive. Yeah, that's good, because neediness is not fun. No one likes neediness. It's an icky energy. What's really a great energy is want or desire. Oh, I want you to be here. I want you in my life. I don't need you, but I want you. It sets the ground play for a much healthier relationship. I want to bring up Edith's. Hey, LaShawn. Hey, Edith. I'm going to bring up Edith's comment here. She says, interdependent is liberating and promotes personal growth, right? Yeah, interdependent is absolutely liberating. And it's liberating. It's always going to be liberating because it's not based off of need. Anything that's based off of mutual need is a tight, constrictive energy, and you'll feel it. You'll feel tight. Hey, LaShawn, hope you're doing well. Does that make sense, you guys? So if we're in a space where we need to always constantly be needed by another person, that's exhausting. It's exhausting being needed by another individual. It's much easier when you can come from a space of want. There's a lot more openness there. I'm going to bring up William's question here. He's got a great question. He says, can you shed light on a codependent relationship with a family member, like a parent versus an interdependent one, and how a child can actively work on changing that? Yeah, that's a great question, William. So if you're caught up in a codependent relationship with a family member, like a parent, and one is codependent and the other is interdependent, that combination doesn't exist. There can be one codependent parent and one interdependent parent. If one person is codependent, then the other person, by the very nature of the relationship, is codependent. Once you become independent within yourself, you can't bring in another codependent relationship. It's just not possible. So how can a child actively work on changing that? Well, it's not the child's responsibility. See, this is the thing here, guys. When you grow up in a family and your parents are fighting, a child will always want to change the parents or fix the issue so he can feel safe, but it has nothing to do with you. So the best thing that that child can do is recognize and understand that the parents are just fighting and it has nothing to do with me. And the best thing that I can do is stay away from them. Because if they're going to fight and not make me feel safe, I just need to get away from that. So that's not the child's job. But with a lot of the times when a child grows up in a codependent relationship, a lot of the time, or a codependent family, a lot of times what happens is there's fighting back and forth, and that child feels pulled, or that child feels compelled to help try to fix the mom and the dad to make itself feel better. And then that pattern plays out everywhere in life. Does that make sense? I'm going to read, let me know if that helps, William. So it's really not up to the child. The best thing that the child can do is just realize that it's not his fault. I'm going to go to Edith. Edith says, I believe it started off as an interdependent. Then he freaked out after 10 years together when he started being jealous of the wind that blew. Yeah. So any relationship that starts off in a codependency stage is doomed to have conflict, and it's always doomed to failure and insecurity. Because the very nature of codependency is insecure thinking. It's, oh, I need you. I don't trust anyone's going to show up for me. And so that person keeps reaching out. Are you okay? Are you there for me? I need you. Codependency just stems from insecure thinking. That's just how it works. Does that make sense, you guys? So anytime that we worry or that we're concerned that someone's not going to be there for us, or someone's not going to help us in a way that we need for them to help us, then we start worrying, and then we actually start clinging to them tighter. And then they feel that tightness. And most people want to get away from those types of tight relationships. Beautiful. I have time for one more question. Who's got one more question about what it means to be free in a relationship? Codependency and interdependence. Does the distinction make sense, you guys? So codependency is all about I need you. Interdependence is I want you in my life. You make it better. And I don't feel like I need you, but I want you here. It's a much more freeing space to come from. Beautiful, guys. That's all I have for this time. Thanks for joining me. I will be going live again tomorrow, so be looking out for that. If you haven't signed up for my Sacred Relationship series, please do. The link is in the description box there below. If you found this valuable, please share with any family or friends. I want this work to spread. It makes the world a less painful place, a more enjoyable place to live in. And if you guys have any questions or thoughts or comments, please don't hesitate to reach out. Other than that, everyone have a wonderful night, and I'll see you soon.